Righty-ho. Now, there is nothing weirder than bloke making video in Asda car park. Now, even I've been conned. This is interesting, by the way. So you see, this is Britain. This free bread outside, the unwanted bread outside the church on Monday morning. I mean, it looks wholesome, but that's Britain. This is plastic. It is so not nutritious. The real enemy of mankind is this kind of Edward de Bono. It all started with people like him. Smart thinking. The wonderful thing about, I love being this age. It's not that you get wise. It's not that you have confidence. It's that things are properly in perspective and you realise there are absolutes. And you should speak in terms of absolutes. Anyway, this is an interesting little, the worst phrase, of course, ever invented is life hack. A really good example of an absolute. I can't stand the southwest. The coastal path is great, but there are so few paths. It's all private, owned by the kind of 30 years ago, the London rich buggers bought up huge amounts, and they don't understand things like the societies like Britain, rightly, are democratically built on public access. No. But you see, here's an absolute. Nothing much can be done about this, but nevertheless, it's an absolute. I've noticed in towns around here a lot of people on crutches. Now, okay, one can talk in terms of it's very sad how the poor diet, etc., and lifestyle of people at the bottom or towards the bottom is not so good for them. But you really notice, now I've spent 20 years, but walking in an area where mainly one is walking on tracks in the hills that are they're on the soil. Stony ground is not a natural human condition. If we were to roll our clocks back 10,000 years, there would not be very much stony ground, meaning, you see, all the walking, even for 6 weeks, 4 or 5 weeks, I've been walking the path along the coast. It's all stony. It's hard ground. Now, of course, you're this class of the officious people who want to tend everything. Now, of course, there's a terrible dichotomy in that. If you have pathways that are used a lot by people, if they're muddy, it's going to be a real problem. But the fact that they've all been, or largely, they've had stone added onto them to make durable pathways, you really notice, and my body's in great nick, but you really notice your joints start to ache a bit. So that's an absolute, meaning something could be done about it. But there's something actually so much more interesting. Now, I was speaking with somebody yesterday who I would say to them, I have said to them, you'd be a great person to get involved in politics, but what is politics? It's just dealing with the powers, the money, the bossocracy, because that's become such a massive thing in Britain, turbocharged since the pandemic. Anyway, I can't remember. Did I put something here or somewhere else? about, there's this kind of weird, well, it's not weird. I kind of discovered almost an interesting natural state, which is this. When I went to bed last night, I was thinking, oh, I must get that out. I'll probably do that in a separate one. Then I went to bed, and when I woke up this morning, it's like, oh, I went to bed with a few things in my head. What are they? They didn't come back. But here's the point. Now, the worst words to come along are words like forage and all of this, sustainable. What do they mean? They're all meaningless words. Okay, what a tosspot this guy is sounding, forage. Now, I kind of realised 3 or 4 months ago, having to, one of the worst words also is resources. So, resources. Now, I haven't got any data left on this phone, so I can't use the internet. I've got minimal gas. I went to one stream that I've discovered there's a pool there. It's very quick to gather water and rinse my clothes, which are now going to dry over the next 2 days. They've been washed and they're going to dry. It'll take a couple of days for them to dry. And I realised, as I was having to move around quite a bit, now of course you can't have the whole world or even 10 million people living as follows, but I know this is the key to expanding the mind. And the thing I despise is all of this kind of life hacks, brain hacks. People like, let's avoid Americans because that just complicates things. People like David Fuller and all of those kinds of people with his rebel wisdom. Oh, psychedelics will expand your mind, or rather, people like Hillary Lawson even 15 years ago. Yes, the key to life is going to be little chemicals that increase your mental capacity. Because I've noticed it's so interesting. This morning, perfect case in point. So I'm like, a few days ago, weather's going to be shit. So I come here because you can only get, tomorrow my tax credit money comes through. I've only been able to find these here. So it's in my head, these are all my resources. Straightforward, but the really important thing is, and it's hard to put this actually into sort of, I mean, the problem with Britain is it's all run by fat 35-year-olds from London, meaning even those that run the media, the culture, the public message, the influencing, the books, the Facebook, the blah blah blah, the media, the sensitive, generally podgy people who feel sorry for themselves most of the time and go out and get smashed and guzzle hard drugs at night. That's the way of cities. I'm not actually criticising that, but they would say to the following, oh, a twee little man in the countryside has got something weird to say, but it's a bit curious. However, it's not for us. No, this is a universal thing that I've kind of discovered, which is if you're bobbing about, and there's got to be physical energy, physical energy is part of it, your bodily going from one place to another, gathering your resources. My resource, there was one place where I know the water's in pretty good condition, or it's okay, but also I can get there quickly because I wanted to be here. I've got to go and get a parking place in 10 minutes. The parking places fill up, free parking for the day. So these are all resources. And as I'm doing that for an hour, and the car kills all of it, when you get in the car, your head isn't working properly, the vehicle. It's like your mind gets turbocharged, because that is the natural state. And my mind, I realised suddenly, it's turbocharged. I've got to pull that out. And as I'm driving along, it's like, I've got four things. Yes. In a video that I made, I don't want to even use the word, in a video I made, You see, these are Air. I didn't put properly the brand. 3M. Yeah, they used to be called Air. AIR. You know, I'm sorry. This is. I actually met a doctor yesterday and spent 20 minutes talking with her, walking along. 68-year-old doctor from Australia who hadn't even heard of John Pilger. It's just astonishing. The most important person to come out of her country, and such a bimbo. As soon as you suggest anything, I mean, one doesn't want to say the Nazi Health Service are fascist, but I'm sorry, I just couldn't believe how utterly disorganised and callous the whole, virtually everybody you ever met with a mid-level health issue over a few years. Just a joke. But that's the people. Oh, that's horrible to say that. Anyway, so I've got 4 things that I wanted to get in. Right. The most important one is this. I have to do that separately because I've got to go now. Yeah, but it's this, as you're going around, and it just doesn't work indoors. It doesn't work. It doesn't work when you've got machinery on. It doesn't work when you're hurrying for work. But I'm, to a certain extent, hurrying. It's almost like the head goes in, the mind goes into a slightly separate mode. Well, it is a more natural mode of I'm thinking ahead. That's the real part of it. It's like, if I'm driving here, I pass that pool on the way, so quickly I can park close to that one, grab the water from that, rinse that. Blah blah blah. It is that your head is in a territory that is obviously not natural state, but it is almost like that's in that territory. You're not encumbered by buildings and things, or rather areas that are no-go areas because they're owned and they're developed. And I mean, it sounds absurd and utopian, and of course humanity can't go back to hunter-gathering, but that mode of being, it really switches the thought processes on. The intellect, let's just keep it to that word, the intellect seems to get kind of partly supercharged, and then straight away, I forgot to say that in that video. I forgot. That's the most important thing. I want to get that out, to share that with somebody. And having your resources limited is also useful. In other words, I was going to send, to me, very important couple of emails this morning, but my data's run out on the phone. So it's like, that's good. I'm not going to get distracted and pulled into that machine. Every time I turn that damn machine in, there's some stupid fucking update or something. No, let's keep it absolutely basic to the matters of, obviously not survival, but nevertheless, what are the things that I wish to pass on that are useful, and I know if someone can ever edit my material and coalesce it down into 1 or 2 useful things, they are really useful. I didn't know about this kind of almost territorial, roaming, resource-focused mode. And I repeat, in that mode, and it's you've got to live it. You can't get it out of a book or go on a course for it. If you're living it, because it's been big, as 3 months ago, I decided, right, I've got to go and change location for a particular reason. But even if the reason's failed, it's taken me into a different state of being, just slightly, which has really, it's like, turned up my intellect levels. There is no great insight to have upon humanity, but those that I have already gathered over many years, and gradually they've coalesced, when you're doing your washing first thing in the morning, your hands are wet, you haven't got time to clean your hands, to write notes or whatever. So it's all stayed in my head. So in other words, my mental function is far better by being in the mode of bobbing around in one's territory, thinking about, if I'm going off to that corner of the territory, actually I can deal with 3 resources at that corner of the territory. And I've done all sorts of physical things. Rebuilding houses, rebuilding fences, rebuilding this, where you're moving a lot outside. But this is a different mode. It's really interesting. It's the gathering and organising one's resources around one's territory. Bad news, you're not going to be able to do it in a computer. No, you've got to actually do it physically. You've got to be physically going through this. And it's got to be part of your actual necessary existence. Definitely puts the gain up, or puts the volume up on... No, not the volume. That implies that one wants to get voluble. I'm the exact opposite. Actually, the only thing I lament is not having 3 hours perfect quiet in the morning. But anyway, the frequency or the effectiveness or the power of your intellect is boosted. It's astonishing. There we go.